Which is the worst single decision in history ever made by a person? Mao Zedong Piscapayani basically told his nation to take pots and pans to kill all the sparrows. However, the ecosystem was disturbed and the locust population skyrocketed. He thought that planting seeds 1 meter in the ground would result in greater roots and better harvest. He also thought that putting tons of seeds in one compact area would cause a better harvest. All the seeds died, however. Around 30 million or so died from famine under his rule. Hey, look at the other nations industrializing. Let's smelt all our metal to build better infrastructure. What? It creates pig iron, which is super unstable and impure, therefore being ultimately useless. Oops. Mao. The more I read about Mao, the more baffled I am. He seems like not just an incompetent ruler, but just like a straight-up stupid man. In his youth, Mao briefly worked in the library of a university and was mocked by the students there for being uneducated. He held that grudge for a hell of a long time, as he basically banned higher education when he came to power. There was a 10-year period when literally nobody in the country was allowed to enter college. Alan Savory, the ecologist who killed 40,000 elephants because it was believed that grazing was causing the desertification of Africa, only to find out later that elephants were essential to prevent desertification. My great-great-grandfather, a carpenter, did some work for a poor painter in the neighborhood. The painter had no money, so he offered either a bottle of wine or a painting. My great-great-grandfather chose the wine. The painter was Edvard Munch, and the painting would have been worth millions upon millions today, or even just a few decades later if translated to today's money. Maybe not the worst asterisk, but maybe Ronald Wayne. He was a co-founder of Apple along with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in 1976. Just 12 days after forming the company, he sold his shares for $800. He owned 10% of the company, which would be worth till $80,000, $80 billion today. Maybe the worst business decision ever made was by Xerox with their Alto computer. Xerox invented the graphical interface modern computers use: desktop, folders, copy, paste, etc. They basically invented the modern computer in the 70s. But the problem was, the people in charge at the time were businessmen without any technical knowledge. So they didn't realize what they had. They did nothing with it and gave it away to universities and showed other companies. The famous story is that Steve Jobs saw this and within 5 minutes realized this was the way computers would work in the future. He copied it because Xerox didn't patent their invention and didn't do anything with it, and the rest is history. Xerox could have been Apple or Microsoft, or both. They could have had a monopoly on the entire PC industry. Almost every company uses Windows in their offices. I think 80 or 90% of consumers uses Windows. That could have been Xerox. They had the tech maybe 10 years before anyone else. They could have been the most valuable company of all time, but they just gave it away. Radcliffe Line, the process to divide India and Pakistan boundary, in 1947 was done hastily and without major considerations to local populace religion. Radcliffe was not a geography guy and majorly messed up the process. Millions died. Not the worst in the world, but apparently my family owned a little town west of Kent, UK. My great-great-great-grandfather got plastered one night and gambled it all away. That one time Nintendo had a partnership with Sony to develop a CD-based console, but in the end changed their mind and kicked Sony out cause they decided to stick with cartridges. Sony then thought, screw this, we'll make our own console, with blackjack and hookers, and created the PlayStation as a U towards Nintendo. Alright gentlemen, we've successfully fended off the Greeks for 10 years. Our great city of Troy still stands. If we keep this up, surely they will realize the siege is fruitless and return home before long. Yo, Captain, there's this big wooden horse outside, Orad, bring it in. The Donner Party of 90 pioneers choosing to take a shortcut when heading west from Illinois. to California in 1846. Said shortcut led to them getting trapped in the Sierra Nevada mountains and resorting to cannibalism. This error was compounded by an even more foolish decision. The Donner Party shot at Native Americans trying to bring them a deer to eat after the Native Americans saw the party starving to death. Let's invade Russia must somewhere up the list, twice. Except for Genghis Khan. He came from the East, cheater. Nokia yesterday this phone will kill you boy developed first smartphone way before Apple, but did not believe them to be the future. They just continued developing the old-style phones. Appointing Stephen Elop first as their CEO, first non-fin CEO, an ex-MS guy who ended up selling Nokia to MS, considered by some many at the time to have been little more than a MS stooge. Murdoch double-crossing Rambo, obviously. Stealing John Wick's car and killing his dog, 299 total kills and counting. Yeah, they will be regretting that for a long time, probably till 2077. Yahoo refused to buy Google for $1 million and later for $40 billion again that they refused. $1 million later offered 3B and Google wanted 5B so. No deal and Yahoo was offered 40B by Microsoft and they didn't want to sell and later they sold for 6B. The guy who rejected Hitler's Art Academy application. Me, when, against my better judgment, I opened a kennel to let two angry pit bulls out. Their owner said, just let them out, they won't hurt you. Next thing I remember is being flown in a medical helicopter to the hospital, where I spent over the months and had 18 surgeries to repair the damage those dogs did. Yep, worst single decision in history, for sure. Sultan Murad IV sending the first flying man. In history, Hezarfen Ahmed Kalibi flying 3 kilometers over the Bosporus in 1638 into exile instead of putting all efforts into aviation. Gavrilo Princip shooting Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On that day, a man acted upon his self-constructed vendetta against a relatively non-tyrannical monarch, thinking the world would remember him as a symbol against foreign tyranny, a symbol of national sovereignty. A year later, 10 million men were dead. It's just a little ice. Keep going. Captain the Titanic. Thanks for watching.